There are multiple candidates in the Democratic primary as well, including my next guest, former Congressman Colin Allred, who's making another run after losing to Senator Ted Cruz in last year's election. Congressman, thank you so much for being here. I do want to talk about your campaign, but I want to start first with this deadly shooting at a Dallas ICE facility close to your home. Your reaction to yet another instance of political violence in this country.
Well, thanks for having me on. And, I'm here in Dallas now. It's my hometown. It's where I was born and raised. And when events happen like this, it shakes the entire community. Lives were lost, families are grieving. And I think before we do anything else, we have to acknowledge that human loss. And also, we have to, I think, commit ourselves to pulling back from the brink of what I consider to now be an epidemic of politically motivated violence that's just been going on for months across the political spectrum, and one that showed up here in my hometown in a devastating way. What
would you say, I should say, to those, including President Trump, who are blaming Democratic rhetoric about what's happening with ICE and law enforcement more broadly for this week's tragedy?
I think a test of leadership is when there's a crisis. Do you exploit that crisis for yourself, for your own political gain, or to deepen whatever caused it? Or do you try and repair that breach? And I think we've seen time and time again that this president fails that test, that there are a number of people in positions of authority here in Texas and around the country that have been failing that test. We need leaders who will remind us of our common values that we share. As my friend and colleague John Lewis used to say, remind us that we might have come here on different ships, but that we're in the same boat now. There is a way to stamp out this kind of violence, but I think it requires all of us in our personal capacities, but also leaders across the spectrum in lowering the temperature and not being a part of the problem. And I'm quite honestly, I'm getting a bit angry about seeing this over and over again, that when these crises happen, that there are folks who are trying to exploit the crisis instead of trying to heal the divides.
You are, of course, running in Texas. The border there already looms large in elections. Now that you have this shooting, which is tied to an ICE facility, and you, of course, have the president's very rigorous anti-immigration efforts, the mass deportation program, how much of a focus will immigration be and the border? How much will it be in next year's midterms? And how would you do things differently than what the administration's currently doing?
Well, I think you and I have talked about this, but my family's from the border. My grandfather was a customs officer. I spent a lot of my childhood there. And I know that our border communities, are real places. They're not just places that, are kind of political backdrops or where cameras show, things happening. And I think what happened, previously was that there was way too much chaos, and we needed to have, some changes to try and reduce that. But what we can do is have a secure border, but also stick to our values. And I think that what we've seen is, an abandonment of some of our most basic values, particularly due process. And I tell folks all the time here in Texas at our town halls that we don't, give folks due process because of who they are. We give them due process because of who we are, that we've made a commitment in this country that we're going to follow certain codes, that we're going to follow certain procedures to make sure that folks get a fair hearing, and that, yes, there may be deportation proceedings, but that those proceedings should be done consistent with the Constitution and with our values. And I think that balance is one that Texans understand that we can do. I think we're not seeing that balance done correctly.
Let's talk a little bit more about your decision to run. You certainly outperformed the Harris-Walz ticket in 2024, but you still lost to Senator Cruz by a significant margin. What makes it different this time around?
Well, as you said, I'm proud that we overperformed the top of the ticket, and that we did it in some key regions like the Valley, like in South Texas, where we ran, I think, 8 points ahead, and we proved that we can compete in some places where Democrats sometimes fall short. But I'm an old football player, and I know that sometimes you lose a game, even if you play well, or even if some things went your way, and you look at it and you say, okay, what can we do differently? And one of the things that was really clear to me is that we needed to center, and for me this is personal because of my own personal story, being raised by a single mom, but center ourselves more on what's going on for working people here in Texas and across the country, that they're working harder for less, that they feel like they can't get ahead, And then we need to speak more directly to that, because I think they were promised in the last election that inflation was going to go away, that the economy was going to come roaring back for them. And they've gotten the exact opposite. They've gotten higher costs. They've gotten their health care taken away. They've had attacks on their kids' education and the schools that they go to. This is not what they were hoping for. And I think we have to tell them, listen, you're not wrong to have hoped that you would get that back, that the economy would come back. But you were lied to. And that's what, to me, as somebody who comes from a single-parent household where we were struggling growing up, that's really important. And I want to drill down on that, talk to working people directly, and talk about what we can do specifically to help them.
Of course, before you get to a general, though, you will need to win the primary, and you do have a competitive primary with State Representative Tallarico. He was on our program last week. He backed you in 2024. Now he's one of your challengers in the Democratic primary. Why should voters stick with you over him next year?
Well, listen, I like James. He's a good person, and I think anybody's welcome to run. But I know who I am, and I know why I'm running. We have to focus on, which, as I said, is, I think returning our party to its roots of being about and standing for working people. And I don't have to read about that in a book. I don't have to, have a white paper to explain what it means when housing is too expensive. I just put out an affordability plan with a number of points in it, but one of them was on housing. And one of them was helping first-time home buyers afford to get into a house with their down payment assistance. That's personal for me because my mom rented a house for 20 years in a school district so that she could send me to a good school that I helped her buy when I was in the NFL. Mm-hmm. And the only reason she couldn't afford that house that she was renting was because of the down payment. So when I have a policy platform like that, I'm not just talking about it, it's something that I lived. I think that authenticity, that experience is one that I've seen folks all across our state understand, that I'm going to fight for them, that I want to make sure that we center our politics on them. And then when we do that, I think we'll have better results in the elections, but I think we'll also, much more importantly, have better policy coming out of it for folks who really need it.
And I remember being there with you in Texas about a month before the election, going to an event with your opponent, Senator Cruz, at that time. He relentlessly attacked you on the issue of trans athletes in youth sports. This has been a playbook that Republicans have run across the country. Has your message on this issue changed at all? How do you think your party has navigated this issue? And what's your message to your constituents that may be concerned about that issue?
Well, listen, I think what I saw in the last election was somebody who was desperately trying to change the topic. And, unfortunately, in some ways, you could say that maybe they did. Because, he had nothing to run on in terms of what he'd ever done for folks or what he was going to be doing for people. And now we're seeing the result of that, which is the big, beautiful bill, going to take health care away from more than 1 million Texans, going to raise their light bill costs, going to make it harder for them to get ahead. That's the result of that fear mongering. But I also think that when it comes to things like this, that we can speak more clearly about it. And I think we have to do that. And for me, it's about making sure that folks are not discriminated against, but that we can have a conversation when it comes to sports about fairness. I'm a professional athlete. I understand that. I think Texans can have that conversation as well, and I think we're ready to do that.
Do you think your Democratic colleagues in Washington are up to Republicans right now and getting some concessions before voting to keep the government open at the end of the month?
I feel really strongly about this, that they have to hold the line. And, listen, the Republicans have the power in Washington right now. But in this case, Democrats have the leverage. And there are literally millions of Americans who are relying on us to make sure that their health care costs don't skyrocket or that they don't just lose their health care outright. And that has to be the fight that we have. And if the Republicans want to take credit for raising folks' health care costs and kicking them off their health care, then that's a fight that I think we can have. Yep. And if you want my vote, then I'm not going to be a cheap date. In this case, we need to make sure we fight for that. Okay, we've got to go there. Thank you, Congressman Colin Allred. Always great to talk to you. We appreciate you being here.
We thank you for watching. And remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.